So they claimed victory in last night's election without even being in a race. The influence of Governor Greg Abbott and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton was felt statewide. And election results in South Texas also showed that.
Scott Braddock, editor of the Quorum Report, joins us now to talk key takeaways, runoffs, and what this means for future work in the state capitol. Scott, I'm assuming you got very little sleep last night, so thank you for sharing some time with us here today. I want to
Not much space between very little and zero, but yeah something like that.
There you go.
Well, I want to talk about the big theme of the night. Candidates endorsed by Abbott and Paxton, they had successful nights, big wins. So what kind of message do you think those victories send?
Well, there will always be debates about what the, quote, mandate is coming out of any election. And I do think that some in media, not necessarily all, present company accepted always, but I think some are getting a little ahead of ourselves in saying that, wow, this means that school vouchers are definitely going to pass in the next legislative session, and that the attorney general can kind of get away with whatever he wants. I mean, two things. One, I would say that the situation with school vouchers, that's in flux. We do have runoffs to go. And we don't know how many Democrats are going to pick up seats this fall. I think that's a question mark. And so all of that can have an impact on what the policy outcome of all this might be. And as for the attorney general, as the speaker pointed out, Dade Phelan in Beaumont yesterday said, look, the attorney general still has at least one criminal trial and maybe more than one criminal trial coming up. And so that story's, still yet to unfold as well.
But their endorsements did, it seems like, I mean, it's hard to say, but they did make somewhat of a difference, right? I mean, the candidates that Abbott backed did very, very well, as Myra just said.
Yeah. So when it comes to the governor, I mean, I think it's interesting. So the governor is trying to move the Texas House in the direction of passing a school choice or school voucher proposal. He still has not said exactly what he wants that proposal to be, even after all this time of campaigning and trying to legislate on the issue over the last year or so. But if you look at the way that his endorsements worked, they didn't just come, with his stamp of approval with his name on it. They came with a lot of money. We're talking about, as much as $1 million or so spent just by the governor against some of these incumbents who he was angry with. And I think it's important for folks to understand that when we're talking about the mandate from this specific election, that when the governor was going after members of his own party, he was not attacking them about school vouchers and school choice. That's just not true. As I traveled the state, and we talked about it earlier here on KSAT, I was in the governor's rallies in places like East Texas, West Texas, and everywhere in between. And what he was attacking the members of the legislature about, that he's upset, with them, about the voucher issue. But what he's attacking them about is the border.
Yes.
And he's attacking them when every Republican member of the legislature, the House and Senate, they all voted for all the things that Governor Abbott wants when it comes to the border. They were in lockstep with him, with rare exception. But these are all people, Steve Allison, for example, in San Antonio, who lost yesterday, he was in lockstep with the governor about the border. And the governor and his allies were saying that Steve Allison can't be trusted when it comes to border issues. And so the level of dishonesty in the campaign, and then what that means going forward for what the legislature is actually going to do, I think, again, it's an open question. And look, there are runoffs that are going to happen that are going to be somewhat determinative about this. And then you also have those fall elections in which, again, the Democrats could pick up some seats. This is one of those years in which Donald Trump is going to be at the top of the ticket, in all likelihood, it looks like. And every year he's been either at the top of the ticket or in office. In Texas, that has meant there's been a decreased Republican vote share all across the state.
You did make that great point on Monday to preview some of these races, that the candidates, or rather the incumbents that voted against school vouchers, that's not what Abbott targeted them for in his ads. He talked about the border. Yet last night, when he issued a statement basically claiming victory for the ads that he endorsed, or the candidates he endorsed, he mentioned education freedom. That was one of the points that he made, not necessarily the border. So do you feel like this signals some sort of change in how the GOP could work together, whether it's on school vouchers or another topic?
I'm trying to figure out whether the Republican Party in Texas is going to be able to come together to work on things the way they have in previous cycles. When, look, as you know, we've covered it here. You've covered it here on KSAT. We covered it at QuorumReport.com. It's been most of my career, coming up on 25 years of covering Texas politics. There's always been something of a civil war happening within the Republican Party, but it would always be in the past, Myra, that you would have Republicans just eat each other alive in the primary. Then they come together and fight the Democrats and then do whatever they're going to do in a legislative session. But the rift now is really unprecedented when you have the lieutenant governor going after the Speaker of the House, the Attorney General going after the Speaker of the House, after the Speaker of the House went after him and led the impeachment against Attorney General Paxton. These arguments aren't just about policy; they're deeply personal. And I think there's also this, which is that for those Republican, and I've had these conversations with Republican office holders, Texas House members who had the endorsement of the governor. They know that if they cross the governor about anything, that he might turn on them just the same way as he did with those that he campaigned against so hard over the last 2 months.
So much focus on Republicans last night and in this conversation, because that's where the big contests were on the ballot. Sure. But let's talk about the Democratic side. Any big surprises that you saw last night?
Not really. We talked about the idea that there might be a runoff in the U.S. Senate race. I was thinking that it was possible that there could be, but I'm not really surprised that Colin Allred already has the nomination to take on Ted Cruz this fall. As we talked about previously, Congressman Allred came out of the gate with $6 million. When he made his announcement, he said he was going to have at least that much money to spend on this race, which is impressive for a Texas Democrat. But look, this state, when you run statewide for anything, resources, that's the name of the game. You've got to have money. You got to be able to run those TV ads in not just the biggest markets in Texas. Think about the fact that our big TV markets are some of the biggest in the country, right? San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston as well. And being able to run TV ads in those places with any, sustained in any kind of a way is a huge undertaking. You've got to have millions of dollars in the bank, and no one was able to compete with him when it came to just raising the profile of the race at all. And look at the way that Democrats voted in comparison to Republicans. Democrats weren't almost voting at all. It almost seemed like that a lot of Democrats may not have even really been aware that there was a nominating contest for the U.S. Senate to go up against Cruz. So give Congressman Allred his due. He's going to take on Cruz, and of course, you probably saw. I know you did. You saw the statements from the Senate caucus in Washington, the Republican caucus there. Basically blasting Allred. As soon as he gets the nomination, they say he's a liberal who wants to get rid of your guns and all that sort of stuff. And Allred coming out with a statement as soon as he had the nomination to say that, in Texas, we can't afford 6 more years of Ted Cruz. So get ready for quite a bloody battle there as well.
Okay, well, here's the other thing that we also have to say was interesting as we look back on last night. So we just looked at the numbers here in Bexar County. We had a low voter turnout, something like 15%. And it was significantly lower than the voter turnout from 4 years ago. Yet, we didn't get the final voting numbers in our county until 2:30 this morning. I looked around, same thing in Dallas County, Harris County, Tarrant County. Could this delay voter enthusiasm?
I've thought a lot about this. It's a great question. People get frustrated with the fact that they can't have the results just instantaneously. On the one hand, of course, you do want to have timely results reported out for people to be able to figure out what's going on. At the same time, I do think that it's a bit of a media creation that we have to have results instantly. We want to report it out as quick as possible. I share that bias along with you. But the fact is that in these large, especially in these large counties, you do have big logistical issues that come up in trying to make sure that the vote is done and it's done correctly. I don't think that it's something that you necessarily want to rush. Of course, you do have the supporters, especially supporters of former President Trump, who would say that when it takes longer to count the ballots, that's when the cheating goes on. I think when it comes to this, the truth is, for just about every instance of this happening, What's really going on is they're trying to get it right before they let us know exactly what happens. And on those election nights, it's journalists like myself and yourself. We're calling campaigns and calling the county and trying to figure out what's going on so we can let the audience know. But at the same time, doing something right sometimes takes a little while, like a Texas brisket. You don't want to rush that.
Yeah, the bigger issue is getting the enthusiasm before the votes are actually tallied, right? Getting people to go to the polls.
And then maybe it would take even longer to get the results.
Yeah. Scott, thanks so much for being with us. We sure appreciate it. Editor of the Quorum Report. Check that out. You always have incredible insight. We'll see you next time.
And get some sleep.
Always. I'll try. Always my pleasure. Thank you.
We'll be right back.